AEW Rampage, Beach Break results January 28, 2022. This week's special Beach Break edition of Rampage kicks off on TNT with the usual "This is Rampage, baby" video opener, and then we shoot inside the Wallstand Center in Cleveland, OH. Jon Moxley vs. Anthony Bowens. From there, Excalibur welcomes us to the special Beach Break Championship Friday edition of the show. He sends things down to the dapper yapper Justin Roberts and informs us that we're kicking things off with a bang this week. On that note, Justin Roberts does his formal introduction of Jon Moxley. Mox makes his way out and heads to the ring to the tune of Wild Thing. He throws a chair in the ring and his music fades down. Now the theme for the Acclaimed hits and out comes the duo of Max Caster and Anthony Bowens. Caster does a good diss rhyme, really giving it to Mox. Bowens settles in the ring for this one-on-one match and Mox runs over and knocks Caster down before turning his attention to his opponent. The bell sounds and Mox immediately goes to work on Bowens. He takes him to the corner and puts the boots to him as ref Aubrey Edwards gives him a warning. It remains all Mox as a few more minutes pass by. He knocks Bowens out to the floor and then rams him into the barricade. Another ref warning prompts Mox to bow to and apologize to Aubrey before raising her hand to get a big pop from the crowd, as well as a complaint from Chris Jericho on commentary for pandering to the fans. Mox and Bowens fight through the crowd a bit and then head back to the ringside area as Bowens takes over control of the offense. Back in the ring, Bowens gets Mox grounded and lands some hammer fists before getting him back up and going to work on him with chops in the corner. Bowens hits a nice Russian leg sweep on Mox out of the corner and goes for the cover, but only gets two. Bowens continues to work over Mox as the fans try and rally behind Moxley to get him back in the fight. The love from the crowd works, as Mox fights back and hits an inverted release suplex, dropping Bowens on his face. He follows that up with some big kicks and hits the ropes, only for Caster to grab his boot from the floor at ringside. This allows Bowens to take back over on offense. He hits a big neck breaker and goes for the cover. He only gets two and continues to work over Mox as Excalibur talks us into a mid-match commercial break as the action continues in this, our opening match on this week's Beach Break special edition of AEW Rampage on TNT. As we settle back in from the break, we see Bowens bring Mox off the top rope with a massive superplex for another close near fall. He continues to dominate the action, stopping briefly to taunt the crowd, which elicits a ton of boos from the fans in Cleveland. He goes for another spot off the ropes but misses and Mox goes to work as he takes over on offense. Mox sends Bowens sailing through the ropes and crashing into Caster on the floor at ringside. He then follows up with a dive onto both. He rolls Bowens back in the ring and stops to do a crotch chop to Caster before re-entering the ring himself. When he does, Bowens cuts him off as he passes through the ropes and jumps back into the offensive lead again. Bowens goes to work on Mox for a bit and then Mox starts to fight back into competitive form. We see some back and forth action before Mox begins taking over again. He hits a big jumping pile driver for a close near fall. He takes Bowens right in front of Caster and blasts him with repeated back elbows. Once Bowens gets back on his feet, he begins taking over again. We see the Acclaimed member start to turn up the intensity in his approach, and he is starting to look discouraged after a few big spots fails to put Mox away for the 3 count. Excalibur points out a mouse under the left eye of Bowens as the fans start to clap and cheer as they look to rally Mox back into the offensive lead. Bowens grabs the boombox as the ref is distracted by Caster at ringside. The ref ends up catching Bowens with the boombox, so Caster throws a big chain to him behind the ref's back as she was getting rid of the boombox. Mox ends up catching Bowens with an RKO before he can use it, so in comes Caster for some blatant interference, but Mox handles him as well. He ends up hitting Bowens with his finisher moments later and scores the pinfall victory in an excellent opening bout. Winner, Jon Moxley. After the match, Bryan Danielson watching from backstage. He sells his left arm after the pinfall victory and we see Bryan Danielson once again watching Mox as the camera shoots backstage and shows the American Dragon smiling and staring at a monitor. We head to a commercial break after this. Andrade El Idolo approaches Darby Allin with business proposal. We return from the break and we see Andrade El Idolo with a camera crew and Jose the assistant backstage. He knocks on a locker room door and approaches Darby Allin. Allin is shown sitting in a chair laughing. Andrade asks why he's laughing and then asks him to sign a contract. Allin laughs it all and says Andrade must have lost his mind. Darby tells Andrade that he's lived in some rough places before and informs him that there's a lot of things you can buy in life, but not him. He tells them that the business meeting is over and tells them to leave. He pulls out a baseball bat and Andrade tells him to take it easy and says he just wants to talk to his boss, Sting. He walks off. FTR vs Lee Johnson and Brock Anderson. As we settle back inside the Wallstand Center, we see all four competitors in our next match of the evening already in the ring. The bell sounds and we're off and running with this tag team contest, which features AAA Tag Team Champions FTR taking on the duo of Brock Anderson and Lee Johnson. Kicking things off for their respective teams is Cash Wheeler and Lee Johnson. Wheeler takes it to Johnson early on but Johnson fights back and then tags in Brock. Brock hits the ring and we see Dax Harwood wants the tag as well. Wheeler obliges and in comes the other member of FTR to mix it up with Arn Anderson's son. The two begin mixing it up and exchange in some back and forth action. Eventually, Harwood begins taking over but isn't able to remain in the offensive lead, as Brock is proving to be a tougher foe than he expected. The action continues and Brock starts firing up, taking out Harwood, which brings in Wheeler. He knocks him down, too, and then tags Johnson back in. Lee Johnson fires up and hits a big drop kick and then clotheslines Harwood out of the ring. He runs and dives onto Wheeler on the other side of the ring and then re-enters the ring and runs and dives on Harwood on the floor. Back in the ring, Johnson comes off the top rope with a high-flying crossbody splash for a close near fall. Afterwards, Excalibur talks us into a mid-match commercial break. When we return from the break, we see FTR still in control of the action. Eventually, the opposing duo fights back into the lead and fires up looking for the finish. A nice turning frog splash almost puts FTR away, however they hang on and the bout continues. Now we see Arn Anderson attack Tully Blanchard at ringside as he tries to get involved. This sets up another super close near fall but FTR ends up taking over and hitting a spiked pile driver double team finisher for the pinfall victory. Great match. Winners, FTR Thunder Rosa and Mercedes Martinez. Vignette. Before heading to another break, we see a vignette hyping the rivalry between Thunder Rosa and Mercedes Martinez. When we return, the TBS Women's Championship will be on the line. Serena Deeb's new mean streak. When we return from the break, we see a vignette hyping the new mean streak that Serena Deeb has shown in recent weeks, including her post-match assault during her recent Dynamite match. TBS Women's Championship. Julia Hart vs Jade Cargill. Now we head back inside the arena where Julia Hart makes her way down to the ring accompanied by Griff Garrison. The commentators talk about how she is still sporting an eye patch over one of her eyes as a result of being misted by Malachi Black. She settles in the ring and her music fades down. Now the familiar sounds of the theme for TBS Women's Champion Jade Cargill hits and out she comes for the latest defense of her title. The bell sounds and we're off and running with this one. Immediately we see Jade dominating the action. She beats Julia down and goes for the cover but only gets two. She starts doing push-ups and sit-ups right next to her to taunt her. Julia tries capitalizing but Jade still continues to control the action. Julia ends up landing a couple of kicks to the kidneys of Jade and then a big thrust kick that backs the champ up. She hits a handspring into a splash on Jade in the corner but when she goes for another one, Jade hoists her up for her finisher. Julia counters with a Hurricane Rana into a pin attempt but Jade kicks out at 2 and then hits a running boot to the dome of Julia. From there, she hoists her up and hits her jaded finisher for the pinfall victory. Winner and still TBS Women's Champion, Jade Cargill. AEW Tag Team Championship. Private Party vs Jurassic Express. We shoot backstage for Mark Henry's pre-main event split-screen interview with the competitors in tonight's headline bout, which will see the AEW Tag Team titles on the line as Jurassic Express defends against Private Party. On that note, we hear from Matt Hardy and Private Party briefly. Christian Cage then cuts in and talks about how Hardy was never as good as himself in the tag team scene during their careers, before pointing out his belief that the same can be said about Jurassic Express being superior to Private Party. Private Party then chimes in and talks about banging the asses of the champs. Jungle Boy fires back and says he's heard the ass-banging claims before and mentions how they have defeated every combo that the Hardy family office has to offer. Mark Henry wraps up the interview with his catchphrase and then we head back inside the arena where Private Party's theme hits. Shots. Shots. Out they come, and after settling in the ring, their music dies down. Now the theme for the champs hits and out comes Jurassic Express. The duo of Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus make their way down to the ring for this week's Beach Break Championship Friday main event match. The bell sounds and we're off and running with this one. We see Private Party jump the champs and immediately take the offensive lead. They end up connecting with their gin and juice double team finisher straight out of the gate, and the commentary team thinks this one is over. Instead, we see the champs kick out and take over on offense. The champs dominate, as Jungle Boy flies all over the place and gets the crowd on its feet. Luchasaurus hits the ring and helps with some double team attempts, but ultimately, Private Party takes back control of the action as we head to a mid-match commercial break. When we return from the break, we see Andrade El Idolo in a luxury box suite high in the stands watching on at his investments in the ring. The Hardy family office duo are dominating the action still, and the commentators inform us that has been the case throughout the entire break as well. Finally we see Luchasaurus try to crawl to his corner to tag in the fresher Jungle Boy. Now we see him fight off Marq, Quen and Isiah Kassidy, which allows him to finally make the much needed tag to Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy hits the ring like a bat out of hell, flying from one end of the ring to the other and back again for dives to the floor on both members of the opposing team. Back in the ring, we see Private Party start to double team Jungle Boy to slow him down. They end up having to deal with Luchasaurus and he does a good job of helping Jungle Boy fight back into competitive form, but hurts his knee in the process. Jungle Boy hits a reverse doomsday device with a moonsault twist, and then we see the Gun Club watching on from the crowd as Excalibur puts them over as the number 2 ranked contenders in the tag team division in AEW. We see a crazy silly string spot from the challengers, but Jungle Boy fires back up and knocks one member of the team into the other. He goes for the cover but doesn't get the pin, so he transitions to his snare trap submission finisher. As he cranks back, we see the other member of Private Party hit a shooting star press to break it up. Now they make the tag and the fresher member of the team hits the ring and goes to work on Jungle Boy. They again look for the gin and juice finisher, but Jungle Boy counters with a Canadian Destroyer. Luchasaurus hits the ring and they hit the Jurassic Express finisher for the pinfall victory to retain the titles. Winners and still AEW Tag Team Champions, Jurassic Express. After the match, the Gun Club attacks. After the match, the Gun Club hits the ring after Billy Gunn knocks out Christian Cage at ringside. The trio of Billy, Austin, and Colton Gunn go to work on a post-match beatdown of the champs and leave Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus laid out as this week's show goes off the air. Thanks for joining us.